It takes a supportive community for all of us to feel empowered to take on daily challenges and make an impact in the world. 180 Elevate is a social networking platform to connect, grow, and give with world-class experts and influencers to dig deeper into an area of life which is an element to uplift our perspectives and humanity. In today's episode about Embodying Alchemy, our guest is Christine Stewart, Head of Media at the World Economic Forum. Let's unfold the magic together as we explore the infinite possibilities.
Everybody, welcome to this episode of Elements to Elevate by 180 Elevate. Each month, we laser focus and dig deeper into an area of life, which we truly believe is an element to uplift our perspectives and humanity. From insights to action, the path to elevate your mind, body, and soul starts here. In today's episode about Embodying Alchemy, our guest is Kirsten Stewart, Head of Media at World Economic Forum. Welcome, Kirsten, and thank you for being on our show.
Thanks so much for having me, Nikki. It's great to be here.
For our audience that are not entirely familiar with WEF, I wanted to just give a quick forum update. WEF's mission is stated as committed to improving the state of the world by engaging business, political, academic, and other leaders of society to shape global, regional, and industry agendas. It is an international NGO that was founded in the 1970s. So Kirsten, you definitely seem to have an incredibly elevated background, ending up at WEF as well. Take us on your incredible journey from childhood to early career to this guru now you're at this amazing place, amazing NGO. Our audience would love to hear about your key learnings and takeaways as you go through each phase of your journey.
Oh, thanks so much, Nikki. Yeah, and there's a lot to talk about because I'm now very old, but I'm thrilled to be here at the World Economic Forum. And as you mentioned, I'm responsible as the head of media, and I come by that naturally because since the time I was a kid, I was always very interested in stories, in storytelling and content. That now we talk about it in terms of media and the kinds of content that we see in different forms, whether it's on platforms or whether it's over the air streaming. Content and storytelling has been very central to my life, and I actually started as a Girl Friday. And for those of you who don't know what a Girl Friday job is, I had graduated university with this English degree, thinking what was I going to be doing with it? And I thought I'd be going into publishing because I always enjoyed the combination of art and commerce, the idea that with the right combination of art and commerce, you could actually really impact the world and then support creators. And so that's always been kind of something that I've been a big believer in. However, the publishing world kind of fell apart at the time I was graduating university, and so I had to answer jobs in the want ads. And that's also something that doesn't really exist much anymore. But in answering a want ad in the newspaper for a Girl Friday, that was essentially the lowest position you could possibly be in the office. It was under the receptionist. I was responsible for everything from filing papers to changing the water bottles to whatever was needed at the office. I did it all. But where it was at a television distribution company. So it was a place that was selling television programming globally. And I got the opportunity at that ground level to really understand and learn it. And being 19 years old and fresh out of school, this was a great opportunity for me. And I think I parlayed that actually staying at the same company when I first joined at the age of 19. And by the time I was still in my 20s, I actually became president of the distribution division. So it was a fast ascension, but it was a very kind of learned one. I got exposed to a lot of things along the way. And I got exposed to a global perspective on how people like to consume stories. And so I went to a number of jobs after then, including heads of certain networks. Like I was at one point responsible for the Hallmark channels globally. Back in Canada, where I'm originally from, I was running something called the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corp, which is like the BBC in Canada. And the transition from the more traditional forms of media to social media when Twitter came along and was interested in starting up a Canadian office. And so I joined them to launch the first Canadian office for Twitter. And after that, a couple of years, that was pre-IPO. It was a much smaller company. When they got larger, they wanted someone to head up their media division, and they asked me to come to the States and run North American media for them. So that's where I was at prior to going to the World Economic Forum.
Fantastic background. Wow. What made you want to pivot from tech into this forum, albeit you're dealing with politicians and tech entrepreneurs, global leaders alike? What an interesting transition from traditional to tech, now to this forum. What was that alchemy of change for you, having you go into different segments and ending up at the forum eventually?
Well, I think alchemy is a great way to describe it, because alchemy is that kind of mixture of chemicals, of nature that makes magic happen. And I think I was lucky to benefit from some magic, in the sense that I was always looking for what was next. I was always looking for what would the future of something look like. And so being in the world of television, obviously, that was something that was, as you mentioned, quite traditional, but it was morphing and changing. Digital was coming on board, disrupting it. Then you saw that was a kind of natural extension to go into tech. And so tech, and being in social media and understanding again about storytelling, but in a new format and in a new way, where people could create the content and people could create stories and upload them, post them, do whatever they wanted on their own channels, which is fantastic. Unlike me, that was at one point responsible for making the decisions on what everybody could see. Now everybody was a content creator, and everyone had access through technology, which is great. Like look what we're doing today. And the move to the forum was an opportunity to kind of put that together, like whether it was the opportunity to bring together platforms, publishers, content creators. The World Economic Forum, when we designed the media sector, was really to look at content creation from the beginning to the consumption. So the content creator, all along the value chain to the consumption. And so that involved technology, that involves creators, that involves so much in terms of traditional and new, that the opportunity to kind of think about what the future of media looks like really needed all those players at the table, so that we could think about what was next. And to be able to be a part of those discussions, when you have the leaders of those businesses, you also have policymakers who are making decisions that give access or not to those platforms and to those publishers globally. Understanding where the world needed to be and how content could make the world a better place was a really interesting place to be, and I've loved my time at the forum.
I'm sure you're doing phenomenal, and you're a very inspirational leader without even knowing it, and which is why we wanted to bring you on this platform. Let's talk about the forum a little bit. Let's step away from the media aspect, because the forum itself is a fantastic organization and controversial to certain folks at the same time. If you were able to speak your mind without fear of retaliation or fear of consequences of anything, and if you were to tie those thoughts into what the forum is today, what is it that you'd like our audience to know about the forum? Where it was before, where it is now, and where it's in the future to be?
Well, you mentioned off the top that the forum started in the 1970s. When you think about it, it's over 50 years ago. It just crossed its 50th anniversary last year. And after all that time, it's still the founder, Professor Schwab, is still at the head of it. So he conceived of the idea. He saw the benefits of other work that he was doing and bringing together heads of state, policymakers, heads of academia, real thought leaders in their field, and the heads of business, to talk about things that could be beneficial, and that could, with all of those people and all of their different perspectives, but all of their ways that they could leverage their impact for good. It was important to get all those people around the table. And I think the one thing that I think is underestimated sometimes is the importance of making sure that you do have people who can create impact. And it's easy to a lot of us, I think, over our careers or over our lives, we get into rooms and we talk about how we'd like things to be. But without the right people around the table, you can't create that change. You really do need people who have access, who have influence, who have the ability, because of their size of their companies, because of their remit as heads of government or heads of state, who really can, make change happen. That's important. And I think, even myself, when I first joined the forum, I couldn't quite relate to why the companies had to be so large and so multinational. But then being a part of the actual organization and seeing how the change happened, the benefit of having people who had that wider view, who had that opportunity to tap into, more impact and create real change was important. And so I think that's the one thing I think people miss on when they think about the forum. They think it's a bunch of guys getting together at the top of a ski hill and drinking champagne and deciding the fate of things. I think today, more than ever, business leaders understand their responsibility. You see that through ESGs, you see it through the different ways that companies understand, and the way that leadership has changed over the last few years is not necessarily the stereotypical corporate head that used to be. There are people in leadership positions who understand and want to make a good impact, and so I think the benefit of having those people around the table to create change is incredibly important.
So you're using the word change quite a bit, and everything in the one thing in life that's constant is change. Let's talk about change a little bit, and let's talk about personal transformation for you. But let's also include the business aspect of it, because a lot of our audience, whether they're trying to go through personal or professional transformation, would love to understand, how do you influence change? So two aspects to this question. One is the forum, what it is today, what is the vision of someone, the 1970s, to how how they have brought together the most powerful, influential delegates, ambassadors of a company, multinational, of a country together. How did they influence that change? How did they pivot the business sense to become what the forum is today? If you could answer that in a way where our business leaders in the audience can learn from some of those answers, that would be great. Is how do you influence change? How do you make it from a vision to this amazing thing and actually get such influential people? And as you talk about that, also maybe talk about your personal transformation, some of the key learnings you've had to transform from this back office person to the person you are today. Is there synchrony in the learnings from those two transformations that have gone on?
I think you're quite right. I think it's interesting when I take the opportunity to reflect on the different changes that I've seen either in my life as a career or in my personal life, and sitting at a place like the forum where you see real change happen. Ultimately it's rooted in the understanding that the world is bigger than yourself. So whether that's the personal change that you want to kick off and start to evolve your own relationship to the world, or whether it's as a business leader and understanding that your company doesn't work in a silo, your company is a part of an ecosystem, and not even necessarily within your own industry, as part of a player of multi-industries that together working towards the same cause or towards the same effect can have a really positive impact. And I think that's something I think we underestimate as individuals, what we have as the power of our individual right to change and our individual influence and power of impact. I think it's quite obvious today that a lot of the work value relationship that people undergo and the kind of value exchange that they have is not as tied up in titles anymore. It's not as tied up in people's salaries, although that's an indication, and there does need to be a fair value exchange for those, that work-life flow and balance. Ultimately, people want to know they've created impact, and I think the same is true for businesses and for business leaders. They want, bottom lines are important. Obviously, businesses need to be sustainable. They need to grow. There's a huge amount of responsibility in business leaders to support huge workforces, when you're at a certain size, but the impact goes beyond your walls, and it goes beyond the cities that you're located, and it goes into the ecosystem that you play a part of. So whether you're a business or whether you're an individual, understanding the role that you play and optimizing it and realizing that there's an opportunity to actually create good and movement towards change, I think is something that we need to appreciate, whether you are an individual or whether you're a business. And that's what I've seen, firsthand at the forum, but it's also something that I've seen throughout my career.
So it sounds like that is the advice that you'd give to your younger self. Is that truly the case? What is it that you'd want our audience to know if they want to be in the same position you are today, being such an influential leader that you've become?
I think, there's something about authenticity. I think there's something about being honest with yourself, being honest about, your skill set, being honest about what you value, and being true to that. I think, there's obviously opportunity as described. I've gone through a lot of different versions of careers to get to where I am today. I've had a lot of personal change and a lot of growth within that change. Some of it came through the opportunities that were afforded me, which I'm very privileged, that I was in the right place at the right time, as you can say. But to also be prepared for them and to know that the work that you do day to day is incredibly important, and to do that, what is in front of you, and the impact that you have is something that you truly need to focus on. You also do need to lift your gaze, and you do need to look around and understand what is happening in the world around you. So being authentically true to yourself, understanding what your skills are, understanding what your value set is, and how those can translate into different roles or different opportunities throughout your career, I think is incredibly important. So as someone, if I were to speak to my younger self, it would not to be tied to one thing. It would be to understand that your skill set will grow and change as you move through your career, as long as you are invested in it, and as long as you are true to what you do naturally well and what you have the capacity to learn and understand, and also understanding that you will do your best work in environments that are true to your value set.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't worry about the titles, the brand, the hierarchies. Go towards what fits your needs and thought process a little bit better. But I would also say, towards the beginning of the career, your professional life, do invest in learning the technicalities. It's sometimes some of the younger folks might mistake that as, I'm not enjoying it, so why do I continue doing it? Know the difference, right, between having to establish a technical skill set versus always having that instant gratification model in today's world. You have to invest in yourself, and then you could diversification is key. Don't have to be in the same company. The whole concept of loyalty, with now the millennials forming 70% of the workforce, has kind of gone out the window as they're exploring different skill sets and values that align to what their interests are. But remember to invest in the knowledge in order to kind of take that pivotal next step. You also mentioned work is important. What you do day to day is important. There are a lot of topics that the forum is focusing on, thanks to you bringing to light, from inequality to terrorism to the vaccination for the extremely poor. In your mind, what is the most important topic that the World Economic Forum is tackling as an alchemist for change that you are very truly behind and you support?
Well, I think right now, obviously, the globe is still experiencing, the effects of a massive pandemic, and that pandemic has done, I think, for people, and I had an impact in a number of different ways. Obviously, some of them quite devastating, and a number of countries are still going through, their as they go through third waves and more. It is so troubling to see how many countries are still actually going to be taking some time to actually move out of this pandemic. I think some of us in countries that are more advanced and have the availability of vaccines, I think, kind of feel like we were emerging post-pandemic, and we refer to this post-pandemic age. We're not post-pandemic, and I think what the forum has very clearly put out is this idea of building back better. when things are so incredibly disrupted, when we have been able to take a look at ourselves as individuals, as countries, as businesses, and really take stock and prioritize what has been important. And I think something like a pandemic really forces you to take hard looks at your role and at what you think is important in the world. This is a real opportunity for many, many companies, countries to build back better. And we talk about that as an opportunity. It's not an opportunity to take advantage of others. It's actually an opportunity to take advantage of what you may have learned through this time, and how you can work together, again, as part of an ecosystem, as part of a wider community, to make sure that the globe heals from this, and that we do come back out of this, hopefully with some strength, and hopefully with some opportunity for everybody, and that there is more opportunity in places that there hadn't been before.
Is there a spiritual self of yourself that talks about how this pandemic was a necessity in of itself to slow down life, to have us be aware of, stop and smell the roses concept? Philosophically speaking, is this something that humanity needed outside of, just the broad economic implications that had both micro and macro? Let's step away from the technical of what the world has to rebuild, and maybe talk in the spiritual sense. What do you truly feel?
Sure. Well, I would never presume that something as devastating as a pandemic unfortunately has a benefit, because so many have been so badly hurt by the impact of it all. I think, has it created a space for people to reconsider and reevaluate their priorities, whether that's on a business and economic sense, or whether that's spiritually in terms of how people feel about their families. I think a lot of people have reconsidered what that means when you have been thrown into a completely different space, whether it's you are lightly affected by having to deal with lockdowns and changes at your work, or whether you've had some of the devastating impacts of losing family members, and things like that. So I think this has been a time for change. I think it accelerated a lot of necessity for change. I think it showed a lot of inequities, particularly as we saw last summer here in the U.S., as we saw the emergence of the racial inequalities and the attention to it in the form of things like Black Lives Matter, which were incredibly important in changing, I think, the view of a lot of people, and recognizing the role that each of us play in the support of each other as humanity. So I think this has been quite a transformative time. It was quite devastating, I think, for people to go through it. But the hope, I believe, is that after all is said and done, getting to the other side of this, hopefully we've learned some hard lessons, and we use those opportunities to be better as individuals and as people and citizens in the world.
Beautifully said. If there was one thing or one quote on the billboard that would have Kirsten's name on it, what would you want our audience to know as your lifelong quote?
I would probably say always be kind. Like I think ultimately it's we have so many choices in our life on a day-to-day basis, and you have choices to in your reactions to things. And I think if you treat each other with kindness and respect, you can get you through any kind of challenge. And I think that's all people really want of each other, is to treat people with kindness and respect.
And be kind to
So
others,
always be kind.
but also be kind to yourself, not to forget oneself,
Absolutely.
to be compassionate to oneself. And that's the whole idea behind 180.
Yeah, and putting that out in the world, it should come back to you.
It definitely should, to harmonize mind, body, and soul, which is what 180 Elevate is all about. Thank you so much, Kirsten. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate it.
Wow, Nikki, that was a great segment with Kirsten. Not only did I learn so much about her, But I learned so much about the World Economic Forum other than what you just read online. So what was your favorite takeaway?
You know, it's a great organization. It's an NGO that was founded in the 1970s, and since then it's come such a far way. What I loved about the alchemist that Kirsten truly is in this segment is how she came up from nothing to everything. You know, she was working in the back office and then switched careers, paths from traditional television to tech to now this World Economic powerful organization that's an NGO. And so, you know, we say it time and again in a lot of our 180 Elevate segments, taking risk, only thing being constant is change, embracing change, embracing the risk as well, you know, when it's calculated risk, of course, is going to be the true alchemist for personal and professional transformations that many of you will go through. And that's the biggest takeaway that she was definitely talking about as well. What about you?
For me, it was about how leadership comes with a responsibility, and a true leader would look beyond their own self, and not just about them, but something in the universe bigger than their own selves. And that responsibility where they're putting a true effort into making that change in this world.
Yeah, you know, you said something about bigger than your own self. One thing she ended with was this concept that we always think about the pandemic being over, whereas when you read up online and then you just step outside of your comfort zone and you look at what's happening in the world, a potential third wave might be coming. And I know you're an evergreen optimist, and you know you're like, you know, this is over. We're thank God back to ourselves. But you know, Kirsten had a little bit more of a warning signal, but in a very positive manner, is that as this is getting over, it's brought up a lot of hardships and inequalities that the world has always faced, and that we should now come out of it with a lot of hard lessons learned and come out of it stronger than ever, hopefully, is what, you know, that we'll learn from it. So I guess what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, in a non-euphemistic manner, if I could say that. But that was wonderful for her.
Yes, it was great.
Coming up next, we have a masterclass to explore influence through assertion, which will help reinforce our ability to show up confidently and allow us to be more influential in our personal and professional lives. It is led by CEO of Silver Brain Consulting, Carrie Weaver. Welcome, Carrie.
Hello. Assertion is a really powerful leadership skill that you can use to influence and gain more power. It's my experience in being an executive coach after 15 years in corporate HR as an executive myself that all career professionals want the same thing. They want to make impact in an organization they care about, working with people that they like, ideally making good money, and doing all of that without losing their sanity and having some semblance of a healthy work-life balance. Well, if everybody wants that, it's because they don't have it to begin with. And why is that? Well, it's that people lack two types of power. They lack personal power in their ability to set a vision and have clarity for the life and career that they want to be leading, and or they don't have the boundaries set up to be able to say no when things don't align to that vision. It's also possible that you lack organizational power. Maybe your organization is huge and no one is listening to you, or maybe it's small and you just don't feel like you have the ability to influence people to the outcomes that would help you feel like you could have that greater work-life balance and the impact that you're really looking for. So it's really a lack of power that keeps us in the malaise of the day-to-day and really victim to the circumstance of our life when we're just going through the motions. And when we don't have power, it can lead to anxiety and stress. We can dread going to work. That lessens our productivity and achievement. All kinds of negative interactions and difficult relationships can spur out of that. And then at the end of the day, we're really talking about having lower emotional engagement in our life, more health issues, lower quality of life, and ultimately unhappiness. And this is very painful. And unfortunately, lots of career professionals are living, eating, and breathing day to day just like this, with a total and utter lack of personal or organizational power. I have some good news though, and it's all about power, influence, and leadership. You see, power is the ability of one person to influence another. And leadership, interestingly, is about the ability to motivate and inspire others into action. And using this definition of leadership, literally anyone can be a leader. In fact, we lead ourselves. So leadership is a process of influence. Therefore, if we want greater power, we can have greater influence. Now, social psychologists will tell us that influence falls into 4 different buckets, or the 4 C's of influence. And those who are influential have all 4 of these things. They are competent, they are confident, they are committed to the organization, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be influential, and they are well connected with other people that have power and influence. Now, a lot of people think influence is one skill, and that's not true. It's many. In this video, we are going to be learning the skill of assertion, which helps reinforce our ability to show up confidently, which of course will allow us to be more influential and more powerful in our own lives and powerful internal to our organizations. So let's talk about that. On this communication spectrum of passive to aggressive, most people would tell me that assertion falls smack dab in the middle. But the truth really is that assertion isn't really even on the spectrum, because it's not really a style of communication. It's nothing more than speaking with clarity. And we do this every time we go to a restaurant and we make an order, right? So it's nothing more than speaking with clarity and purpose. I would like a Caesar salad. Every time we order food at a restaurant, we're asserting, whether we realize we're doing it or not. And what's really helpful about this restaurant circumstance is it gives us a beautiful framing for why assertion is so powerful. So let's think about a restaurant circumstance. We want to think about each party that's involved in ordering food at a restaurant to have a problem and therefore a solution. So let's think about that for a second. What is a restaurant's problem? Why are they in business? Well, a restaurant is in business to sell food to its customers, right? So their problem is sales. They need to make sales. And if they're successful in that, they have a winning business, right? Hopefully their food tastes good too. Let's think about us. Why are we a consumer going to a restaurant? What problem are we trying to solve? Hunger, right? I'm hungry. That's why I'm there. That's my problem. So when we put these 2 things together, we can start to think of a win-win solution. And simply by ordering a salad, there is a mutually beneficial solution. They're getting a sale at the restaurant and I'm getting something that I can eat and not be hungry anymore, right? So let's talk about how to assert with confidence. Here's a few steps, and then we'll get into practice. First, you need to analyze what it is you really want. What are you asking for? Because an assertion really is an ask, but you have to understand first why. I want you to do like a root cause analysis. So in the restaurant example, what I want is a Caesar salad, but why I want it is hunger. We have to solve for the why. Once you do that, then get crisp about what it is that you're going to ask for, right? The Caesar salad is the ask. Promise me that you'll make talking points. Write these things out, especially if you're not yet adept at this skill. Write out statements. They could be long, they could be short, but really your aim is to get as crisp and clear as possible. When you're crafting these statements and ultimately sharing, you want to make sure that you're doing so with this win-win solution in mind. We can't just ask for stuff and never expect to do anything in return, right? We have to ask for something that's fair and reasonable and makes sense, but that the other party gets something out of it. But once we've done that and communicated our assertion, stop talking. Let them react. So oftentimes we jump in with qualifiers and other questions and we try to soften the blow. Nope, you're just going to stop talking. All right, let's talk through a more tangible example here. Let's practice getting the analysis, deciding, and preparation, and then we'll go into delivering a powerful assertion. So I first want you to pick kind of like a low stakes want that you have. I work with lots of clients who at the end of the day have all the household chores on top of everything that they did at work, and they just want some time to deeply recharge. This is even something that's happened for me. So let's say I just want my partner to take out the trash because it's that one extra thing at the end of the day that I don't want to have to do. Well, why do you really want that? Again, what's the root cause here? It's because you want to recharge. You want to have greater energy. Well, what would help you recharge and have greater energy? Aha, maybe it's meditation. So what's the win-win here? You can't just ask your partner to take out the trash and you not do anything in return. So you want to try to solve the problem on the front end, right? What's in it for them? What are you going to do as maybe a trade-off or a compromise, and script out this message. So let's pretend that I did that and I put a lot of thought into it. And now I want to deliver my assertion. Here's what it might look or sound like. I want more time at the end of the day to recharge through meditation without having to worry about household chores. That's the ask, right? I want to meditate without having to worry about chores. That's it. It's clear, it's concise, it's simple, it makes sense. And right now I have an engaged listener because I'm not demanding, I'm not asking anything of them yet. I throw in here some data first to make sense in the context of why I'm asking for this. So this second bullet says, knowing that our trash fills up every other day, let's pretend this is a household with lots of kids, and that it takes about 10 minutes to take out, I want to find a win-win solution. Just by saying that, your listener, your partner in this case, hasn't shut down, they're not defensive, their ears have perked open because they already know you're coming in a collaborative spirit trying to find a solution, all right? And you haven't asked them to do anything yet at this point. Here's the ask of them. If you would kindly take out the trash in the evenings, during which time I plan to meditate, I will gladly start feeding the dogs in the morning, which also takes about 10 minutes. What do you think? That's a powerful assertion. All of those things together, right? Now, it's possible that feeding the dogs in the morning doesn't take 10 minutes, or it's no sweat off your partner's back and they're going to do it anyway. They may have gladly just said yes to all of it, or they might say, actually, that doesn't make sense. Why don't we do something else? All of that can be part of the discussion, right? But the discussion can happen because you powerfully asserted in the first place. You were clear about what you want, why you wanted it. You came in with a win-win solution. You came in with a compromise or a trade-off, and then you opened it up for discussion. So bravo to you for getting to that point. Ultimately, you might come up with a different solution that's going to work better for your partnership if we're using this example, but that's part of the human condition and experiencing what it's like to live in a partnership or have something that's not always going to work out neat and tidy with a bow. The power is in doing the assertion. Let me give you a few more tips for how to assert powerfully. You want to make sure to clear out the verbal clutter. In the example that I just gave you, there was no just, hedging, kind of, maybes. It was just clear and concise and simple, right? Also, there was no apologizing. Women do this in particular, but men do it too, that we want to be seen as likable. And so we try to soften the blow and not be seen as too direct or bossy. But remember, on the spectrum of communication, passive or aggressive, assertion isn't on there. Assertion is just speaking with clarity. It's having a want and an ask and a win-win, okay? So don't buffer in any other way here. You want to make sure that you punctuate, pause, take up space. Do this to make sure that people are understanding what you're asking for. So don't rush. And it is important to look at what your body's doing. I always recommend that my clients practice in the mirror, maybe as silly as that sounds. It is so helpful to see what your face is doing, what your body's doing. And if you're rounded and hunched and closed, energetically, your partner in this example is going to feel that, and it's not going to feel confident, nor is apologizing. Right? Apologizing diminishes the level of confidence and it takes the power away. So we're not going to be seen as influential if we don't have that power. And you want to make sure you're making statements, not asking questions. How many of you get sucked into this up talk, again, to try to soften a request? I would like a Caesar salad. Well, would you? Is that a question? Right? We want to make sure we're not raising the tone of our voice at the end of a statement, because that's what makes it sound like a question. So just speak with clarity. So those are some powerful tips for asserting. My name is Carrie Weaver. I am the CEO of Silver Branch Consulting, which is a boutique leadership development firm focused on teaching emerging executive women the 12 science-backed skills that are needed to influence people at the highest levels and influence your own way into the C-suite. If you liked this particular course, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. You can find me at Carrie A. Weaver, and you can also go to my website, Silver Branch Consulting, to learn more. I hope you enjoyed the content. Be well.
Thank you for joining us today and elevating yourself. Charity should begin at home, but should not stay there. At 180 Elevate, it is our honor to support local and global philanthropies which make an impact on the lives of our beautiful children and the world in of itself.
What would this world look like if we all felt cared for? Let's co-create that new paradigm. If you would like to consider joining our philanthropic mission, please consider donating at 180elevate.com. And next is just a glimpse into one of the many philanthropies our organization supports.
ठीक है इसको नहीं हाँ ये नहीं
Around the globe, the belief was that if you open a school, children will learn, but children are not learning. For example, in India, 97% children are enrolled in schools, but approximately 50% children go to 5th grade and cannot read a 2nd grade paragraph. The question to be asked is why? All human knowledge is stored in words and numbers. If you don't have foundational skills, all doors to acquiring wider knowledge are closed. And that's, I think, a global problem. In the Pratham program, it takes 50 days for a child to learn to read. If that is possible, how long will it take for 100 million children to read? Is the answer 50 times 100 million, or are we talking about 50 days? I've been working in this sector for the last 25 years. Everybody's trying to find answers to the same problem. How can we get all children to learn? I think it's easy to see in Indian schools. There are those who have access to preschool education, parents are educated. They form what I would call the front of the class. And the remainder who don't have preschool education, they form the back of the classroom. And the teacher actually more engaged with the front of the classroom. And the back of the classroom gets more and more neglected. I think that needs to be shaken up and said, do something about it. Pratham's solution for this problem is called teaching at the right level.
हाथ ऊपर करो जोर से लाओ जितनी जोर से हो सके पहले हम लोगों से अपना व्यवहार उसके लिए कुछ गतिविधियां करना जरूरी होता है उनके साथ कुछ बातचीत पर्सनल करना उनका जान पहचान बनाना तो बच्चे और रिलैक्स हो जाते हैं उससे हम दोनों लोग मिलकर पढ़ेंगे नहीं जी
The place to start is always assessment. We show a piece of paper with some words, some alphabets, and some long paragraphs. Depending upon which one children can read, that is the level of the child. Instead of teaching children at every age grade, we actually try to group children according to levels.
अगर मुझे एक एक बच्चे के स्तर पता चल जाएंगे तो उसी के अनुसार मैं उनको डोज दे सकूंगी या फिर उनको गतिविधियां करा सकूंगी कुछ भी बताते हैं तो वो जल्दी से सीखते हैं
The activities are divided into 3 parts. The class begins with everybody participating in a story listening activity because that doesn't require reading, it only requires listening and learning the words. And then they break up into small groups. The alphabet readers are engaging with all kinds of phonemic charts and so on, and they can read words before they know. So if you know words, you are given paragraphs.
टीना की रेल रल बहुत दूर तक
So before they know it, they've become paragraph readers. And the third activity is then the children individually do some writing. So every child actually starts progressing. In the Pratham program, it takes 50 days for a child to learn to read. Children feel good about themselves. It's not only about reading, writing, arithmetic. Believing in yourself is the most important strength that you can acquire. And it's great fun.
Pratham has worked together with JPL affiliated professors for over 15 years to evaluate and adapt the approach to work at scale. We're a global research center. JPL conducts randomized evaluations on social programs. One of the most impressive studies was conducted in Uttar Pradesh. Students who attended the learning camp at the end of the program, double the number of those kids could read a simple paragraph than those children who didn't attend the program. What we're trying to do at JPL is best support governments and a number of organizations who are trying to adopt teaching at the right level to help them do that as best as they can.
All the government primary schools have been covered under this program. There has been a significant improvement within a very short period of time. I believe that teaching at right level is a must. It has no substitute.
Last year, we reached 8 million children. We must make sure that all children will learn to read. And then once you do that in a country the size of India, why can't it be done globally?
The Teaching at the Right Level program in Zambia is being implemented in 1,100 schools. And next year, the program will go to 1,800 schools. When you see kids learning, you see kids light up and feel empowered. Teaching at the Right Level is one way of empowering these children that I think could be really meaningful throughout their lives.
Kids are not resistant to learning. It's just the way you package it. I think we are giving back children their childhood. That's the teaching at the right level. It's about my self-esteem, that I'm somebody, and then I'm going to grow.